3 days, and the US will be forced to make a decision that will affect the entire global economy. If lawmakers don't find a way to reopen the frozen government and then agree to raise the national debt ceiling, America will default on its debts. And if that happens, the shock will be felt well beyond its own borders. Artisan Isanawe reports.
Well, there's been no headway over the weekend between Democrats and Republicans coming to some kind of agreement on how to raise or whether or not to raise the debt ceiling. With that said, without a U.S. budget in place, the government has run out of money to pay thousands of federal workers, but that's nothing compared to what we'll possibly see on Thursday, October 17th at midnight. If the U.S. doesn't secure a rising of its debt ceiling, they'll have to default on its over $16.5 trillion of borrowings, and that threatens to thrust the global economy back into recession. So you have the rest of the world very worried. They're panicking. You have the heads of various major financial organizations, global financial organizations like the IMF, the World Bank, speaking out. IMF Chief Christine Lagarde talking about how American legislators need to be responsible, that this bickering is ridiculous. They need to find a way to get through this so the rest of the world doesn't have to pay for these dire consequences. You have the head of the World Bank speaking about how a default would affect developing economies as well as the developed world. And then you, of course, have U.S. trade partners who are watching very closely, some of them terrified. Countries like China, huge economic partners. What will happen to them if the U.S. does go ahead and default? Well, according to experts, whether or not it happens on Thursday, China is still going to rethink the way it does business with the United States. Here's Jeffrey Summers of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
The United States, of course, is an economy which lives on global credit and the foreign purchase of its treasury bills. So this puts it in a very precarious position moving forward in terms of the ability to fund many of its programs domestically. For those countries in which finance is a very, very big player within their economies, they are very, very nervous. Well, I think it just gives further fuel to that move. And of course, China has been trying to see if it could coordinate a new order, which would be less dollar-based.
Now, this first U.S. shutdown in 17 years has seen 800,000 or so federal workers not have work, basically, receiving no pay, not being called in. And then you have reports of thousands of other workers basically being threatened with dismissal if they don't work for no pay. So people here, of course, are not happy. You have protests breaking out, especially in the Capitol here over the weekend. A group of truckers came in towards the U.S. Capitol, covering the Beltway, really blocking traffic, trying to get awareness there. You had veterans this Sunday coming together and coming to memorials. Let's not forget that parks and landmarks are being closed due to this shutdown because there's no one to work there, no one to keep up the maintenance. So there was thousands of protesters who, in fact, broke through a barricade on Sunday to try to get to a World War II monument. They were peaceful, just chanting slogans like "break down these walls," singing patriotic songs, but yet there were riot police there ready to go to control these veterans. The veterans saying that military personnel and their colleagues are being used as political pawns in this government shutdown. And if the U.S. does go ahead and default, of course, those protests are expected to get worse, not to mention the effects it will have on the rest of the world. They're going to change the way they see the United States. The rest of the world is not going to forget these couple of days leading up to this default, whether or not it happens. The U.S. economic reputation has, of course, been changed.